Hi, welcome to my channel. Today I am making cheddar biscuits. They are really easy to make. They don't take a lot of time at all, and you can either make them by hand or you can use a stand mixer, which is what I'm going to do. So I start by measuring the ingredients first, but before even I do that, I'm going to make my own buttermilk because this is a southern recipe and usually uses buttermilk, but I usually don't have it. So I'm adding 1 tablespoon of vinegar to 1 cup of milk. So that's going to give you a really good buttermilk substitute. It's really easy to do. While I'm measuring the other ingredients, I'm going to let this sit for maybe about 5 minutes or so, or however long it takes me to mix everything up. It doesn't really have to take that long. So now I'm going to fluff up the flour in the container and measure 1 cup. And it's 1 level cup and then 1 more cup. So 2 cups total for this recipe. It makes quite a few biscuits. Between 9 or so, 8 or 9, depends on how thick you make them. So now I'm going to add some baking powder and make sure your baking powder is active, that it's new. So make sure you check the date on the package so that you can tell that it's working and it's within working age. So I'm adding 4 teaspoons here, and that's quite a bit of baking powder for this recipe. And you also use a little bit of baking soda, only 1/4 of a teaspoon, because you're using buttermilk and the baking soda reacts with the acid in the buttermilk or with the buttermilk substitute that we're using. And I'm also adding 1 teaspoon of salt. So that is a really well seasoned biscuit, and you don't need more than that because the cheddar already has salt as well. So I'm just mixing that up lightly with the tablespoon there, and I have my mixer bowl, and now I'm adding 4 tablespoons of butter. This is an all butter mixture. That's what it looks like in there. So I just cut the butter into 4 tablespoons, and now I'm mixing it up, and I'm going to show you what it's supposed to look like once it's been mixing up for a while. You just want it to be granules. You know, it kind of looks like oatmeal. Sometimes you have bigger pieces of butter, as you can see there, but the butter just mixes into the flour mixture, and it makes it really easy to add the buttermilk next, because that's what you do. So the buttermilk goes in, and you mix it very lightly after you add the buttermilk because you don't want this to be tough. If you overmix this at this point, then you're going to have tough biscuits. So you mix it very lightly. I'm at the lowest speed. You can also do this by hand with a pastry cutter and just mix it in with the fork, but I like my stand mixer. I love my KitchenAid. So every possibility I have to use it, I usually take the chance to do it. And now I'm adding 1 cup of cheddar cheese, and then I'm just going to pulse. See, I go and I stop just to mix in the cheese very lightly. You don't want to overwork the dough. So if you do this by hand, you're probably not going to run the risk of doing that, but if you're using a mixer, you have to be careful. So I have covered my board there with plastic wrap, and this is the baking dish. I just put some butter, melted butter on the bottom, and now I'm going to start working the dough. I put some flour on the plastic there on my board, and now I'm just putting some flour on the dough to make sure that I can open it up without it sticking to my fingers. Make sure you don't use too much. You don't want to make this too tough. The more flour you add, the tougher it's going to be. So you work it very lightly. I'm just patting it open with my fingers, and I like to use it to have it go to about 1 inch. So I'm cutting up the biscuits now, and I have a really cute biscuit cutter. It has fluted edges and it's square, but you can just use a water glass to cut out your biscuits. That can happen very easily as well. I put a little bit of flour on the cutter to make sure that it goes through lightly, and make sure that you go straight down when you're pushing it down instead of wiggling it. So make sure you push straight down when you're cutting out your biscuits, and I just put them straight into the baking dish. I'm using just a glass baking dish. I usually use a pie pan if I'm making round biscuits, but I used the rectangle this time. So make sure you put your dough back together, open it up one more time, roll it out with your fingers. You don't need a pie rolling pin to work with this dough, which is really good. You can just do it with your fingers. So the biscuits that you cut out the second time, they won't be as fluffy as the biscuits, the first ones that you cut out. That's the thing. So the more you do this, the less fluffy they're going to be. But that's life, you know, that's just what happens. So they're still going to taste really good. Cheddar biscuits are delicious. You can also add some seasoning to this. There are people who you add Old Bay seasoning to the cheddar biscuits. I like them plain with just the cheese and the butter. I like an all butter biscuit, so that's why I don't put any shortening in mine. If I have it on hand, sometimes I will, but I usually don't. So I just like the cheddar taste. And you can make scones too, but scones have eggs and heavy cream, and they're also delicious. But the straight up biscuit, what I'm doing now is that I'm turning them over so that the buttered part is on top, so that they'll get a little brown on top and caramelized. So make sure you turn them over and the buttered side is up. And that's what they look like before they go in the oven. They bake for about 20 to 25 minutes at 400 degrees. That's how I like mine. Make sure you start checking them at 20 minutes and see how brown you like them. But this is the good thing about covering it with plastic. Look at what I do. I just roll up the plastic and that's my cleanup. No cleanup for me. It's a lot easier. So they go in the oven at 400 degrees, 20 to 25 minutes. As I said, start checking at 20 minutes and see how well baked you like them. And that's what they look like. They are tall biscuits because of all the baking powder that we put in there. They are flaky. They are not dry. Biscuits that aren't dry are very hard to come by. And this is a great recipe. The amount of liquid to flour is perfect. So I hope you try them. I hope you come back. I try to post once or twice a week, depending on how my week goes, but I love to cook, I love to bake. And if you got any value from this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button and come back and try out these recipes and let me know if you make them in the comments. Thanks, bye.